Mistakes. They're often seen as a bad thing, but they don't have to be. A mistake is just a path that you haven't taken yet, and it's most likely to start at the right one. Some of the best inventions were made by accident, such as microwaves, a now household item made because a scientist left a chocolate bar in his pocket in the middle of an experiment, potato chips because a chef got angry about a customer's complaint about his fries, and most importantly, penicillin, because a scientist forgot to clean his petri dishes before a vacation and noticed all the bacteria had been killed. These are some of the ways of how imperfections can make something perfect. Before I go on, I want to define perfect, how it's defined as an adjective, having all the required or desirable elements, qualities, or characteristics as good as it is possible to be, much like this artwork you're looking at right now. This painting is clearly unfinished, but that's what I believe makes it a perfect painting. If it was finished, maybe it would just be another painting nobody pays attention to, but since it has this big mistake, it's even better than it would have been if it was finished. And that's what makes it stand out, making it as good as it can be. Perfect. The reason it's not finished is because this artwork was painted after the revolution. The reason it's not finished is because this artwork was painted after the Revolutionary War, and this was during the signing of the Treaty of Paris, an agreement between the US and Great Britain, officially ending the Revolutionary War and establishing the US as an independent nation. The British were so ashamed that they lost the war that they refused to be painted, leaving it unfinished, creating this beautiful piece of history. But maybe we can see what it would look like if it was finished. By erasing this mistake, we take away its character, and more importantly, its history. But we just completed an unfinished painting. But what about fully AI-generated images? The best way to talk about this is by bringing up a very important man in the world of creativity and art, Hayao Miyazaki. The director of Studio Ghibli, the animation studio that brought us these hand-drawn masterpieces such as Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away. That take great effort, taking years to make. And when being shown how AI could be incorporated into his work, Miyazaki shuts it down. They show how we can create some scary movements that humans can't think of. Miyazaki sees this and immediately thinks about his friend that he often visits that has a condition that makes his muscles stiff and hard to move, and how this AI, being a thing that humans can't even imagine, would be a misrepresentation of this pain that his friend goes through. Because of this, he believes AI would be a falsification of the real world, and he ends the meeting with a great quote.
極めて何か生命に対する侮辱を感じます。
The Studio Ghibli movies are all great representations of human emotions and human effort. The hugs, the cries, all the emotions shown in these movies, they have real impact. They are something that AI just can't replicate, although it's getting close. And the closer it gets, the scarier it becomes. But regardless, even at the point that it can replicate it, there is no emotion behind it. It's just copying rather than creating.
Oh, deja vu.
And not just emotions, but hard work as well. I want to see the effort and time gone into a project in order to make it the best it can be, not this BS. While AI images can be kinda cool, like these dark fantasy creations, what's not cool is knowing that these are almost always a rip-off of an already popular IP, like Minecraft or Berserk. And also that it took no effort, just a person behind a screen typing and a random image coming up, rather than a person sitting down and painting it, or an actor with a set and a design background, camera, director, and everything else needed to make that production. And it pains me to say that these things look good, because I would love to see a movie like this, much more than the actual Minecraft movie. But I don't want to see this made by AI. I want to see real life people making real life movies, and I'll talk more about this later. But thinking about mistakes and emotions in AI, I started to question, are emotions mistakes? I mean, robots are supposed to be these things that don't make mistakes, and coincidentally, they don't have emotions. Sure, they can show emotions like the creepy promotional video for the new ChatGPT.
OpenAI? Huh? Sounds vaguely familiar. Kidding, of course. That's incredible, Rocky.
But they can't have emotions, and that's a big difference. Humans have emotions, and while I don't think having them is a mistake, I do believe the product of it can be. Sometimes we may lash out when angry and say something we don't mean, but other times we can overcome our fear and do something we've never done before. This difference in response is what art is all about. Whether it's Good Will Hunting or Spider-Verse, this release of unspoken emotions through visual, dialogue, and music is why I love movies, and why I want humans to keep making these movies that are relatable and funny and charismatic, and just something that will make me feel. I want the characters in a movie to feel realistic and have real emotions. Maybe they make a bad mistake because of it, and that's what drives the movie forward. My best example of this would be in Infinity War with Star-Lord. Star-Lord learns that the love of his life is dead, and that causes him to make some rash decisions. And this one decision is what causes the downfall of all of the Avengers. And it was a purely emotional act. And while we sat in our seats, clenched our teeth, watched it unfold, and wished he wouldn't have done that, we can understand it because it's relatable. Because we aren't perfect, and that should reflect on the art we create. But in which ways can we be perfect? And I believe it's through the absence of mistakes, obviously. But humans aren't perfect by any means. So when we actually perfect something, it makes it that much more impressive. Take the Mona Lisa for example. It's often considered the perfect painting, with brushstrokes that are invisible to the naked eye, and even adding 30 layers of paint that equal to less the width of a human hair. This is impressive because of the room for error, because he was human. According to the Louvre, it took him 16 years to paint the Mona Lisa, making it even more impressive as to how passionate and dedicated Leonardo was to his craft. And the most important thing I can take away from the Mona Lisa is its emotion. People say that the Mona Lisa conveys a very ambiguous expression, which just means it's open to more interpretation by the viewer. With more than 10 million people visiting the Mona Lisa each year, imagine how many different interpretations were made. And that's because it has a soul. We can think of it more than a painting, and think about the person that was being painted, and the painter, and we can sort of put ourselves in their shoes more than 500 years ago, and think about that time period and how she felt and the process of being painted and so much more. And we just can't do that with AI. It's just so soulless and uninspiring. We can't relate to the AI, we can't feel what it creates because it can't feel. So how is it supposed to recreate something it doesn't know? It can't. And that's why we need to stick to man-made art, so we can feel properly and deeply. We need to let our mistakes shape us to be perfectly flawed, and that's exactly another way to be perfect. Not by no mistakes, but because of mistakes. Like the famous story of Thomas Edison failing to make a light bulb, and only after many fails was he able to make it work. It's the simple use of trial and error, but it's much easier said than done. Having to fail over and over again is so demoralizing, but you have to get back up no matter what, because eventually you will succeed. Like Spider-Man, he is the epitome of this concept, persistence. What would he be if he didn't fail from time to time? Sometimes he fails so much that he even gives up being Spider-Man, but not for long. He remembers the words of his uncle.
With great power comes great responsibility.
And his greatest failure, not being able to save him. It wasn't his fault directly, but he had some part to play in that. And his greatest failure leads to his greatest success. But it's this process for success that most people are afraid to do. They're afraid to fail. It's like that saying, everybody wants to be Spider-Man, but nobody wants to be Peter Parker. Because everybody wants to win, but nobody wants to lose. But most people just haven't figured out that in order to win, you must lose. AI is the very epitome of this. It tries and it fails. And as it fails, it learns and does better the next time. Until it's perfect. And that's how AI evolves so fast. With the vast information of the internet, it is evolving every second. Even faster than that. Of course, as of right now, AI is nowhere near close to being perfect. But what then? At some point it will be. And once AI has been perfected, this creative side of the internet and art forms in general will die. People won't need to work as hard anymore, and they can just make a movie by the click of a button. Creativity is dying. Miyazaki also said, we humans are losing faith in ourselves. And I agree. We've lost so much faith in our ability to be creative. Sure, many people are still creative, but how are we supposed to see that when in this day and age, creativity is looked down upon? I mean, what is this? And this? Selling for millions of dollars. And especially in movies. The era of remakes. It's the fault of the big studios since they know older, more popular franchises have that familiarity and therefore more chance to bring in more money. And then they just approve it, precisely because of that, money. And while that's good from a business standpoint, to the viewer, it just feels lazy and uncreative. For example, take D23. Every movie they released, sequel, reboot, another sequel, and one original movie. Most of the movies announced were all sequels, remakes, or reboots. And it's not just Disney. Almost all the movies nowadays in theaters are just sequels to previous blockbusters and rarely any original ideas. The Crow, Gladiator, Beetlejuice, Twisters, Alien. And while yes, these movies can still be masterpieces, like I believe Alien Romulus to be, but as amazing as this movie was, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a sequel, or a prequel, or a reboot, or a remake, I don't even know. But I can't complain that much about this movie because it was actually really good. But the movies that I'm mostly targeting is the soulless sequels that you know are there just to make money. But despite it being a sequel, the one thing Alien Romulus does so well is its minimal use of CGI. Most of the monsters in the movie were practical effects, like seeing the facehugger robot be controlled around the floor makes my spine tingle, and the chest burster shooting out of his chest looks so cool. And spoilers ahead for Alien Romulus, but the first time I saw this image, I actually cringed so hard. So that alien right there is not CGI. He's a practical effect nightmare. He's the basketball player, sorry if I mess this up, Robert Bobrovsky, but he's standing at a crazy 7'7". Imagine being the actor having to stand next to someone twice your size, made to look like an alien. These practical effects are also so good for the actors. Acting next to a real life thing's 100 times better than trying to imagine a giant lizard on a tennis ball. And also how goofy it looks from the actor's standpoint. And seeing Ian McKellen, who plays Gandalf, break down on the set of The Hobbit because he's acting next to a bunch of green screens instead of real actors just makes me feel so sad for them. And I would much rather them use practical effects rather than just using green screen or CGI. But despite of good practical effects and CGI, these sequels, remakes, and popular IP, they shouldn't be made purely for the money. The audience can tell the intentions behind a movie. If a movie is just trying to push an IP as hard as possible and without being faithful to the original, it's going to fail. But I just want studios to put real passion behind these projects because I hate seeing actually good IPs get misused and wasted just because of greedy studio execs. There's so many good stories behind these IPs that can be so good and a money machine if done correctly, and I still don't understand how the studios haven't figured that out. But regardless, these soulless sequels most likely won't stop, neither will AI. I can talk as much as I want about AI, sooner or later it's gonna be here. So I just want to say that. I want to see all the beautiful and gorgeous art we can make and how creative humans can be. Now is the perfect time for you to be creative while you still can. Don't be afraid to act. Mistakes are part of the process, and instead of thinking of them as bad, think of them as learning opportunities. I consider myself a perfectionist, and that is my biggest flaw. If I don't think I can do it perfectly, I don't even attempt it. And I hate that I do that, because
dude, sucking at something is the first step towards being sorta good at something.
I'm slowly losing this perfectionist side, and this video is the very proof of it. The amount of times I've put off this video and procrastinated is insane. I used all these different excuses, such as I didn't have the tools to do it, or I didn't think I would make a good video, or nobody would watch it, that I just ended up never making it. But here I am, pushing through that. And I just want you to learn from my mistakes. So please, go out there and try. Go out there and live, talk to more people, go outside, try new things, even if you know you will fail. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Go out there and find a real human being to talk to. We come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly. And don't take this quote just as a means for other people. Use this on yourself too. You're imperfect, but that doesn't make you any less valuable. Yes, you will make mistakes, and yes, you will mess up, but don't beat yourself up over that. Just take it slow and learn from your mistakes, because remember, mistakes are what make something perfect.